Let me tell you about my friend Sarah. She's 35, successful, owns her own marketing company, and has this incredible wisdom that comes from years of experience. She thought she had it all figured out. But 3 months ago, she called me crying because the man she'd been dating for 8 months suddenly became distant and cold. "I don't understand," she said through tears. "I've been nothing but supportive. I've shared my wisdom, I've tried to help him grow, I've been honest about what I need. Why is he pulling away?" And that's when it hit me. Sarah wasn't doing anything wrong, she was actually doing everything that made perfect sense. But somewhere along the way, her good intentions were being interpreted completely differently by the man she cared about. That conversation sparked something in me. I started researching, talking to relationship experts, and interviewing both men and women about this exact issue. What I discovered shocked me, and it's going to shock you too. Ladies, what if I told you that the very things you think make you wise and experienced are actually pushing the men in your life away? What if the confidence you've built over the years is being mistaken for something that's slowly eroding the respect you deserve? I know that sounds harsh, but stick with me because what I'm about to share might just save your relationships and change how you see yourself forever. And before you click away thinking this is just another video telling you to change yourself for men, it's not. This is about understanding the psychology behind respect and how we can accidentally sabotage ourselves without even realizing it. Point 1. Acting like his life coach instead of his partner. The first thing that makes men lose respect is when we start treating them like our personal improvement project. And ladies, I get it. We've learned so much about life, about growth, about what works and what doesn't. When we see someone we care about making what we think are mistakes, our natural instinct is to help. But here's what's really happening in his mind. Every time you say things like "you know what you should do" or "if I were you, I would," or "have you considered that," maybe he's not hearing wisdom. He's hearing that you don't trust his judgment. Think about it from his perspective. Imagine if every time you shared a problem at work, instead of listening and supporting you, someone immediately jumped in with solutions and advice. How would that make you feel? Probably like they think you're incapable of figuring it out yourself. Men, especially, are wired to want to be the problem solver, the provider, the one who figures things out. When we constantly offer unsolicited advice, we're accidentally communicating that we see them as broken or inadequate. The shift here is simple but powerful. Instead of being his life coach, be his cheerleader. Instead of "you should try this," try "I believe in your ability to figure this out." Trust me, the change in his energy toward you will be immediate. Point 2. Constantly comparing him to your past experiences. Number 2 is something we do without even realizing it, and it's deadly to respect. We use our past experiences as constant reference points. "My ex used to do this in my last relationship." I've learned that men who... Ladies, every time we do this, we're essentially telling him that he's not unique, that he's just another man in a long line of men we've analyzed and categorized. We think we're sharing wisdom, but what he hears is that he's being compared to every other man who's disappointed us. Here's a story that perfectly illustrates this. My friend Lisa was dating Mark, and she had this habit of saying things like, "Oh, my ex used to forget to call too," but then he learned she thought she was being helpful, showing him the path to improvement. But what Mark heard was, "You're just like all the other men who weren't good enough." After 2 months, Mark told her he felt like he was constantly being measured against some invisible standards set by her past relationships. He said he never felt like he could be himself because everything he did seemed to remind her of someone else. The respect killer here is that it makes him feel like he's not seen as an individual. Instead of comparing, try celebrating what makes him unique. When he does something sweet, instead of "my ex never did that," try "I love how thoughtful you are." See the difference? Point 3. Using your age as a shield for bad behavior. This one might sting a little, but it needs to be said. Sometimes we use our age and experience as an excuse for behavior that we wouldn't accept from anyone else. "I'm too old to play games," we say, but then we give the silent treatment. "I know what I want," we declare, while being inflexible about everything. Age and wisdom are beautiful things, but the moment we start using them as shields to avoid accountability or growth, we lose respect. I've seen women say things like, "I'm 40 years old, I shouldn't have to explain myself," or "At my age, I don't have time for this," when what they really mean is, "I don't want to do the work this relationship requires." Real wisdom isn't about being rigid or using your age as an excuse. Real wisdom is knowing that every relationship requires patience, understanding, and yes, sometimes explanation and compromise, regardless of how old you are. I remember watching a woman at a restaurant completely dismiss her date's concerns about her always being on her phone during dinner. Her response? "I'm 45 years old, I don't need to ask permission to check my messages." The look on that man's face said everything. It wasn't about the phone, it was about the complete disregard for his feelings, justified by age. True maturity is taking responsibility for our actions and their impact on others, not hiding behind how many years we've been alive. Point 4. Mothering him instead of loving him. Number 4 is the mothering trap, and this one breaks my heart because it comes from such a loving place. We see a man we care about, and our nurturing instincts kick in. We start doing things like reminding him about his appointments, organizing his life, telling him what to wear, making sure he eats properly. We think we're being caring, but what we're actually doing is turning ourselves into his mother instead of his partner. And ladies, no man wants to be romantic with his mother. The respect dies because we're treating him like a child who can't take care of himself. Even if he seems to appreciate it at first, eventually it builds resentment. He starts feeling suffocated and infantilized. I had a client, Jennifer, who would pack her boyfriend's lunch every day, lay out his clothes, and even call him to remind him about meetings. She couldn't understand why their intimacy was disappearing. "I do everything for him," she said. And that was exactly the problem. When we do everything for a man, we rob him of the opportunity to show up as a capable adult. We also rob ourselves of the opportunity to be seen as an equal partner rather than a caretaker. The key is to love him, not parent him. Support his goals, but let him figure out how to achieve them. Be his partner in life, not his manager. Point 5. Dismissing his emotions because you think you know better. This next one is huge, and it's something I see all the time. Because we've lived longer and experienced more, we sometimes dismiss or minimize his emotional responses. When he's upset about something at work, we might say, "Oh, that's nothing to worry about," or "You're overreacting." When he's excited about something we don't think is that important, we might bring him down with our realistic perspective. When he's hurt by something, we might tell him why he shouldn't feel that way. Ladies, the moment we start invalidating his emotions because we think our experience gives us the right to judge what he should or shouldn't feel, we lose his respect completely. Here's what's really happening. You're communicating that his inner world doesn't matter to you. You're saying that your perspective is more valid than his lived experience. That's not wisdom, that's emotional dismissal. I remember a conversation I overheard at a coffee shop. A woman was telling her boyfriend that he was being too sensitive about his boss's criticism. "I've had way worse bosses," she said. "You just need to toughen up." I watched this man shut down completely. His feelings had just been completely invalidated by the person who was supposed to support him. Respect grows when we honor each other's emotional experiences, even if we don't fully understand them. Your job isn't to fix his feelings or teach him what to feel. Your job is to hold space for his emotions and support him through them. Point 6. Making everything about your timeline. Number 6 is the timeline trap. Because we're older and more experienced, we often feel like we don't have time to waste. We know what we want, and we want it now. "I'm not getting any younger" becomes our battle cry, and we start pushing relationships to move at our pace rather than their natural rhythm. This shows up as pressure about commitment, timelines for moving in together, marriage discussions that feel more like ultimatums, and constant references to our biological clock or our need for security. While it's completely understandable to know what you want, when every conversation becomes about your timeline and your needs, it stops being a partnership and starts being a negotiation where he feels like he has no say. I worked with a woman named Patricia who, on the 3rd date, was already talking about where they'd live after marriage. By the 6th date, she was frustrated that he hadn't introduced her to his family yet. "I don't have time to waste," she kept saying. But what she didn't realize was that her timeline was actually pushing him away. Men lose respect when they feel like they're being rushed into decisions or that their comfort level doesn't matter. They start feeling like a means to an end rather than a person you genuinely want to build something with. The shift here is to share your values and what you're ultimately looking for, but allow the relationship to unfold naturally. Trust that if he's the right person, he'll want to move forward with you. If he's not, no amount of timeline pressure will change that. Point 7. Always being the responsible one and resenting him for it. This next one is sneaky because it seems so reasonable on the surface. We take on the role of being the responsible one in the relationship. We handle the planning, the organizing, the decision-making. We make sure bills are paid, appointments are kept, and everything runs smoothly. But here's where it gets toxic. We start resenting him for not being as responsible as we are. And we begin to communicate that resentment through criticism, eye rolls, and passive-aggressive comments. We say things like, well, someone has to be the adult here, or I guess I'll handle it like I handle everything else, or what would you do without me? The respect killer here is that we've created a dynamic where we're the responsible parent, and he's the irresponsible child, and then we punish him for playing the role we assigned him. Here's the truth: if you always step in to handle everything, you're not allowing him the opportunity to step up. And then you're getting angry at him for not stepping up. It's a lose-lose cycle. I know a couple where the woman handles literally everything from booking their vacations to remembering his mother's birthday. Then she complains constantly about how he never takes initiative. But every time he tries to plan something, she takes over because she thinks she can do it better. The solution is to step back and create space for him to be responsible. Yes, he might do things differently than you would. Yes, there might be some mistakes along the way. But you can't have it both ways. You can't control everything and then complain that he's not taking charge. Point 8. Using your sexual experience as a weapon. This one is uncomfortable to talk about, but it's crucial. Sometimes we use our sexual experience and knowledge as a way to criticize or educate him in bed. We might say things like, "My ex was much better at this," or "You're doing it wrong, let me show you," or "I've been with men who really knew how to please a woman." Ladies, the bedroom is the most vulnerable space in any relationship. The moment we make him feel inadequate or compare him to other lovers, we destroy his confidence and his respect for us. Sexual compatibility grows through communication, patience, and mutual exploration. It doesn't grow through criticism or comparison. When we approach intimacy with an attitude of "I know better because I've been with more people," we're not being helpful, we're being hurtful. I had a friend who told me she educated every man she was with about what women really want in bed. She couldn't understand why none of her relationships lasted more than a few months. What she didn't realize was that she was making every intimate moment feel like a performance review. The shift here is to approach intimacy with curiosity rather than judgment. Instead of "You're doing it wrong," try "I love it when you." Instead of comparisons, try guidance that's specific to what you like. Make him feel like he's the only man who matters, not like he's competing with your past. Point 9. Constantly talking about how men usually are. Number 9 is the generalization trap. Because we've dated more, we think we understand how men operate. So we make statements like, "Men always," or "Men never," or "All men are," and we say these things right in front of him, as if he's not a unique individual but just another member of a species we've studied. This is incredibly disrespectful because you're essentially telling him that you've already decided who he is based on every other man you've known. You're not seeing him, you're seeing your idea of what men are like. I remember being at dinner with a couple where the woman spent the entire evening making comments like, "Men never listen," and "Men always think with their stomachs," and "You know how men are with directions." Her boyfriend sat there getting quieter and quieter. Finally, he said, "Can you stop talking about me like I'm not here?" When we constantly generalize about men, we're not showing wisdom, we're showing prejudice. We're taking our limited experience with some men and applying it to all men, including the one sitting right in front of us. The respect dies because he feels like he's not being seen as an individual. He feels like he's constantly having to prove that he's different from your generalizations, rather than just being accepted for who he is. Try replacing men always with some men I've known, or better yet, just focus on him specifically. See him as a unique person, not as a representative of his entire gender. Point 10. Acting like you don't need him while secretly resenting that he doesn't try harder. The final respect killer is the independence paradox. We're so proud of our independence and self-sufficiency that we constantly communicate that we don't need him. "I can do it myself" becomes our motto. "I don't need a man," we declare. But then we secretly resent him for not trying harder to help, for not insisting on taking care of us, for not fighting through our walls to show us love. This is confusing and exhausting for him. On one hand, you're telling him you don't need him. On the other hand, you're upset that he's not trying to be needed. You're pushing him away while simultaneously wanting him to pull you closer. I see this all the time with successful women who are afraid to show vulnerability. They've built walls to protect themselves, but then they're hurt when men don't climb over those walls. Here's the truth: there's a difference between being independent and being closed off. You can be a strong, capable woman who also appreciates and welcomes a man's efforts to love and support you. The respect grows when you can be both strong and soft, independent and open to partnership. Let him know that while you can handle things on your own, you'd love his help. Show him that his efforts to care for you are noticed and appreciated. Vulnerability isn't weakness, it's the bridge to deeper connection and mutual respect. Ladies, I want you to hear me clearly. This isn't about changing who you are to please a man. This is about understanding how our actions affect the people we love, and making conscious choices about how we want to show up in our relationships. Your age, your experience, your wisdom, these are all beautiful gifts. But like any gift, they can be used to build bridges or build walls. The difference is in how we choose to share them. Real wisdom isn't about always being right or always being in control. Real wisdom is knowing when to lead and when to follow, when to speak and when to listen, when to be strong and when to be soft. You deserve to be respected, valued, and cherished. But respect is something that grows between two people who see each other as equals, who honor each other's experiences, and who create space for each other to be fully human. The goal isn't to make yourself smaller or less experienced. The goal is to make your relationship bigger than both of your egos, more important than both of your fears, and stronger than both of your past hurts. Here's something that will change everything. Start every difficult conversation with curiosity instead of certainty. Instead of "you always try, I'm curious about," instead of "you should try, what do you think about this?" One shift will transform how he sees you and how he responds to you. Remember, you're not trying to be perfect, you're trying to be real. You're not trying to have all the answers, you're trying to build something beautiful together. If this video opened your eyes to something you hadn't considered before, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Share your thoughts, your experiences, your questions. And if you know someone who might benefit from hearing this, please share it with them. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do is help each other see our blind spots.